Hello TK, for phonics today, we are going to go over the letter D sound. So our objective for today, remember our objective is what we are going to learn. So our objective is I can identify things that begin with D. So when we're looking at a word, we want to look at the beginning of the word. We are going to look at the beginning. And this is our sound hound. Our sound hound is breaking down our words for us. So he is telling us the beginning is in front. So this is where you are going to find your letter D. Your letter D will always be at the front of the word. So now that you know where to find your letter D at the beginning of your words, now we can go ahead and pull out our worksheet. This is the worksheet we'll be working on together. And we are going to be sounding out each of our pictures. Each of these pictures has a name. And we're going to figure out if they do start with the letter D, we're going to circle them with our pencil. And if they don't start with the letter D, we are going to mark a big X on that photo. All right, so before we begin working on our worksheet, as always, we have to do step 1. And step 1 is writing our first and last name. Let's go ahead and do that together. Miss Cortez. Okay, TK, now that I have went ahead and wrote my first and last name, I am going to start looking at my pictures and trying to figure out which one of these begins, remember, begins with the letter D sound. D, D. So if we look at our first picture, it can look like an igloo, it could look like a cave, but this is actually called a den. Now, looking at this word, does it begin with the letter D? Do you see the letter D at the beginning of the word for den? You do see it, right? So you know that this picture does begin with the d sound. So go ahead and take your picture and circle your den. And we can color that picture later. Okay, TK, moving on to our next one. This one is kind of easy because it's already telling you how it's spelled. This is a dad. Do you hear the d sound at the beginning of the word? Dad, d. Yes, you do. So go ahead and take your pencil and circle dad. You will also be coloring him later. Now I'm going to move on to my next picture. My next picture is a door. Does door begin with the D sound? Door? Yes, it does. So I'm going to also be circling the door because it does begin with the D sound. This next picture, I'm going to bring it closer. This could be a man, but he has some special things on him. He has a coat. And he has something where you can hear somebody's heart. So I'm going to show you. Because of the things he has on him, we know that this is a doctor. Does doctor begin with the D? Yes, it does. So go ahead and circle your doctor because it does begin with the D sound. All right. Now we're going to look here. This is a bone. Bone. Do you hear the D sound in bone? No, right? You don't hear the letter D at the beginning of bone. That is the B sound. So we're going to put a big X on our bone. Okay, now if we move down to our alligator, does that begin with D? Alligator? Do you hear the D sound in the beginning? No, right? So we're going to go ahead and put an X on our alligator. Now move down to, we're going to be using these a lot this week. This is called dice. Everyone say dice. Dice. Does dice begin with the D sound? Let me check. Do you see the D at the beginning of dice? Yes, I do. So go ahead and circle your dice. All right, now I'm going to move on to my next picture. I see a mermaid. mermaid. Do you hear the D sound? No, right? So you're going to put an X on the M, mermaid. All right, now move down to your cat. You saw some of these in your assessments. A lot of you said they were dogs, but it's actually a cat. And cat, that starts with the C sound, not the D sound. So we're going to put an X on cat. Now we're moving on to some of our last pictures. I see a duck. Duck. Does duck begin with the D sound? Do you see the letter D at the beginning of that word? Yes, I do. So go ahead and circle duck because I hear that D sound. Now we're going to move on to this. This is the letter I. But whenever you write your letter I, you put a dot at the top. This is called a dot. Now, do you hear that D sound in dot? Yes, I do. So go ahead and circle dot. All right, now we're gonna move up here. This one kind of looks confusing, but these are actually dishes, and this is called a dishwasher. Does dishwasher begin with the D sound? Yes, it does. Go ahead and circle your dishwasher. And now our last photo, this is a deer. Do you hear the D sound in deer? Deer? I do. So I'm going to go ahead and circle my deer. Very good. Now go ahead and make sure you color your pictures, all the pictures that begin with the D sound. You are not coloring the ones that do not begin with it. And you are going to use this to help you complete the rest of your assignment. Your assignment for today is to find all the things that begin with the D sound. So you can use your worksheet to say, did I see an octopus on my worksheet? Does octopus begin with D? No, so we're gonna leave that alone or cross it out. What about, I see some dice right here. Let me see. Does dice begin with D? Maybe I forgot, so maybe I can look at my worksheet. Do you see dice circled? Yes, I do. So you're going to circle dice on this end and color it. I want to see all the things that begin with the letter D sound circled and colored, just like we did on our worksheet. So both papers need to have things that begin with the letter D sound circled and colored. You are going to take a picture of both of these pages and submit it to Class Dojo. Thank you for following along. As always, you're amazing, TK.